What's up, my friends? It's Davin, and I'm back for another episode of the Free Your Voice, Free Your Life podcast. Look, I know these episodes have been a little bit sporadic recently, and so just want to say thanks for sticking with me, hanging out, listening. I've gotten some really lovely notes lately from people who have listened and gave me feedback and how they're following what I'm doing and they find the messages useful. And so I just want you to know that I'm really grateful for the community that has developed here around my somewhat sporadic recordings, but it really means a lot for me to be able to connect with you in this way, and just really grateful that you would give me your ears for some time so that we can connect. Um, Part of the reason that the episodes have been a little bit all over the place is because I've been a little bit all over the place, and being the one man show that I am, it can be hard to stay on top of everything that I'm trying to do. But it's all good. It's all good, and I mean that so seriously. I am doing some of the most beautiful, fun, playful, experimental things in my life right now, and it feels like every corner I turn is a new opportunity to do something that I haven't done before, and so I'm really grateful for that. Most recently, or not most recently, but the thing I told you about most recently was that I was going to Lisbon, Portugal, to surprise the team members of the WD-40 company in improvisational singing. And so I made my way there a few weeks back, and I got to tell you, it was so fun. I loved Lisbon. I had been to Porto, Portugal earlier this year for a conference, but I went to Lisbon for the first time and I walked my ass off. I walked miles. I explored the city. Um, and I just felt like it just felt like a really great aligned sort of time. The actual work itself with the company was great. So beautiful. And I'll give you a little bit of how the sausage gets made sort of thing here. So I arrived on I don't even know what day it was, but I arrived the day before, which is the appropriate thing to do when you travel internationally. Actually, should probably arrive 2 days before, but just to give myself flexibility, arrived the day before. And then the very next morning at the kickoff of their meeting, I was the very first thing that was supposed to happen. And I had to tell you, I was jet lagged. Literally, they had me going at 8 in the morning, getting their team members to sing together. So some of them were jet lagged too, but I was really tired and I did everything in my power to sort of get myself going and awake, and woke up really early and did some exercise and some meditation and you name it. But the truth of the matter is, I was not my sharpest self. And so when I actually did the work with the group, I noticed um, that they were a little slow on the draw, and I felt a little slow on the draw. But I also noticed that they were smiling and laughing and singing and clapping, and it was overall good. But I walked away from it getting a little bit in my head, feeling like because I wasn't at my sharpest, that maybe I didn't do a good job. And I told some friends, talked to some friends about it. But the company was so gracious to invite me to participate in some of their other happenings over the next day or so. And so I got to go to some dinners and just hang out with the team members. And it was a great reminder that sometimes the thoughts that we think, they're not true. Our perception is not always the reality, because the feedback that I got from everyone I spoke with was that they loved it, that they had a great time, that it was unlike anything they had ever done before, and they just found it to be really useful and playful and fun. And some people told me that the reason they were a little slow on the draw is because they had been out the night before, as you do at a company meeting. So anyway, I get it, but I just want to say that it was a good lesson for me because you know, even when I'm not at my best, what I'm bringing is so has a power in and of itself. I don't need to be at my best for the work to be transformative and quite magical. If I can get people to use their voices, if I can get them to sing together, I can promise they'll walk away with a positive feeling. That's just the nature of the art form. That's just the nature of coming together. And it was just a reminder to me to not always follow the thought that tells you, you suck, this is bad, you messed it up, you could have been better. It's not a useful pattern to go down. It's more an opportunity to explore understanding the totality of the situation and not getting up in the small, minuscule criticism. So I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. I learned a lot. It was an entirely international room, a lot of different languages spoke in the room. But they really came together and we made music and we had fun and I got lots of affirmation. So I'm really grateful. So thanks to my new friends at WD-40 and to the folks that were so willing to participate. Um, so then I came back, and then for 2 weeks, my partner and I, we went on a holiday, a vacation to Scotland and London. And I got to say, 10 out of 10 would recommend, particularly the northern parts of Scotland. Like nothing I've ever seen before. Isle of Skye, chef's kiss. So good. I won't rehash my whole vacation, but it was so good and so necessary because, yeah, we just needed a break. We needed to get away. But get this, I fly back into Chicago on 6 p.m. at 6 p.m. on Friday evening. And the next morning, I head over to the McCormick Place, which is a big conference center here in Chicago, to kick off the Society for Neuroscience annual meeting. Um, Maybe I told you about this, but pardon me, I'll repeat a little bit. I met this woman named Susan Magsamen. She wrote this book called Your Brain on Art. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly, highly recommend you do. But she was doing the keynote at the Society for Neuroscience, which this conference had 22,000 attendees. Now, they weren't all in the meeting that we did. There were 5,000 in the meeting that we did. Still a lot of people. But it's a big deal that she did this keynote because there's never been an arts-focused keynote like this before. And her work is really around the healing and transformational power of creativity and from a neuroscientist standpoint, from a science-based standpoint, and really looking at what is the future of prescribing creativity and art as a way to alleviate suffering and pain and actually heal illness and heal disease. There's so much great evidence around this. And you know what sits at the top of the list are things like singing and dancing. And so Susan asked me if I could get 5,000 neuroscientists to sing together. And I, with some sort of crazy blind faith, said yes, I could do that. And I've never done 5,000 people before. I've done 2,500, which felt like really scary. But this, I was like, yeah, let's give it a go. And so I invited some friends, my dear friends here in Chicago, Michelle Thomas, who's an incredible jazz singer, Molly Lear, who is a great pop singer and also a music teacher, music school owner, Elisa Hunt, who is a singer and performer here in the city, and my friend Jake Rosner, who is also an incredible circle singer and improviser, but does amazing beatbox. And so I invited them to come help me because I figured I probably needed a little help with that many people in this giant space. And so, long story short, we did it. We did it. And it was amongst the most wonderful experiences I've had doing this sort of thing. I was very scared. I was very intimidated. I didn't know how it was going to go down. But the minute we invited people to start to make sound and then stand on their feet, they did. And it was really magical to see them because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They were totally surprised by this, confused, perplexed, maybe. They knew what the nature of the talk was, but they did not expect for someone like me to come out and be singing improvisationally and get them singing and dancing. So I gotta say, peak experience. So grateful to Susan for being willing to take this risk with me and with my friends. And it paid off. It paid off. So much positive feedback. People had a really good time. And I am thrilled to know that I have the capacity to do this with such a large number of people. You know, there's a video online of Bobby McFerrin doing exactly this with a stadium full of people. And I've watched that video so many times because I just marvel at how cool he is and how calm he is in his body and how he doesn't try to overcompensate for the sheer number of people that he's leading in this work. And I strive and long to be just able to channel just a little bit of his energy because it's so incredible and so admirable. So it's been big, my friends, and just again, really grateful, really, really grateful. Before I get into today's topic, the last thing I wanted to mention to you, well, there are two things I want to mention to you. One is that I'm going to be at the Kennedy Center on October 28th for the Reset, my immersive sound healing experience. You can learn more at theresetsoundexperience.com. But I'm going to be performing on the 28th. All of the stage spots are actually sold out, but there are auditorium seats available, and I hope you'll take advantage of those if you're in or around the area or you know others that are. But this is going to be another honor of a lifetime. I can't believe that I get to do this at the Kennedy Center. It feels monumental, and I'm so excited. And it's October 28th, and I hope you'll come, or you might tell others to come. And then on November 15th, I'm going to be bringing the Reset to the Lyric Opera of Chicago. We're going to take over the grand foyer, if you will, and turn it into a big, beautiful sound bath. And the tickets are not yet available. They're going to go live, I believe, this week or next. But again, keep an eye on the Reset Sound Experience, or find me on Instagram at Davin Youngs, and you'll find tickets to that. But November 15th, those tickets are going to be insanely inexpensive because this is sort of a gift from the Lyric to the city of Chicago. And so I hope that you will jump on those fast, because I think they're going to go really quick. Okay. Last episode, I shared with you a little bit about my relationship to meditation and why I account it amongst one of the most influential practices in my life that I've ever encountered, and why it's been an important part of my voice and singing journey, and how singing and voice actually led me to meditation. And I wanted to expand on that just a little bit this episode, because there's a theme in that I think is really relevant, and it's something that I've noticed recently in my coaching work too. And it's what I would call the hardest part about singing. It's the hardest thing to do in singing, and it's the most essential thing when it comes to finding growth. And this is simply to notice. The hardest part is to notice. And you're going to be able to pick up all sorts of dual, analogous information, metaphorical information about what this means for your life too, because I don't actually think this is specific to singing. And so I'm going to jump back and forth between this. But I want to start with singing as an example, and sort of pull outward from there. But here's the thing. When someone comes to seek change within their voice, when someone comes to me for coaching, or they come to one of my programs, generally they feel like something is off or wrong. Something doesn't feel quite right. Something feels stuck. Something feels like a hindrance. Something feels inhibitive. And they don't know what it is. And they feel frustrated. And they feel like this deep inner calling, or deep knowing that there should be something more there. They feel a sense that they're missing something. And so they seek help. They seek support. They seek someone like me who potentially can listen, can hear, can look, can notice, and give them feedback on what might be holding them back. And this is a really beautiful arc of relationship that we have throughout our lives, that we get in these situations, we get feeling stuck, we get frustrated, feel like we are hit a plateau, or you name it, or we just need to break out of the bounds of what we've been doing. And so we seek external guidance to point us into a greater awareness. And so what happens in those situations is, typically, most of the time, I'm able to listen to someone, and I'm able to work with them, and I'm able to get to know more about their life and what they're struggling with. And as a result, I'm able to give them feedback on what it is that I feel like might be inhibiting what it is that they're doing. And the place that I always start, and if you've been hanging out with me for a while, or if you know me very well, the place that I always start is the body. The place to start is always the body. It's where the most objective information lies. It's where the functional truth of your voice is. It's where the voice happens. But it's also not just where your voice is. It's actually where you are living now. Your body is where you are. I heard recently that this language we use around the mind-body connection is based on a false premise. It's based on a premise of the two being two separate things, that the mind and that consciousness and that thought is somehow separate from the body. And that a more appropriate terminology would be mind-body unity, because they are inseparable. You are not a mind without a body, and you're not a body without a mind. But what contemporary science tells us is that our mind, our thinking mind, only captures in actual thought about 5% of what's happening. In fact, our bodies, and specifically our nervous systems, are gathering exceedingly more information than the mind is. And the mind is simply translating the little bits of information that it is able to filter through from the body. And so what happens is we essentially are always telling a story about what we're feeling. We're always writing, composing, creating a story around what we feel in the body. And so, an essential part of coming back to this awareness that something feels off, something feels wrong, is to try to create a new origin point of awareness in the body. Because what happens is people come in and they go, "Yeah, I'm bad at breathing." Or, "I can't sing in tune." That's a really common story. It's funny, someone said that to me recently. They're just like utterly convinced that they didn't sing in tune. And then I literally heard a video of them and they were singing perfectly in tune. And I was like, that is such it's incredible how the mind had created, or someone had given them this complete story that was false, absolutely false. And they believed it entirely to be true. Okay. So you come to me, something feels off, something feels wrong. I bring you back to the body and I show you and I say, "Hey, do you notice that? Do you feel that? Are you aware of that?" And here's the humdinger of it all. Most of the time your answer is no. I don't feel that. Sometimes it's, "Oh, yeah, maybe." And then very rarely it's like, "Yes. Oh, totally. That's it. I got it. I feel that exactly. I know that." But this goes back to my initial statement. The hardest thing is to notice because you don't know what you don't know until you know it. You know the story, but you don't necessarily know the thing or the objective truth. And so when I say to you, what does it feel like in your throat? Do you feel that the back of your tongue is rigid? Do you notice that your jaw is not moving? Do you notice that when you breathe in, your shoulders come up to your ears? Do you notice that your neck feels quite stiff? Do you notice that your face is so scrunched every time you're trying to make a sound? And it's hard to notice. It's hard to notice. In fact, I would even say, as humans, we're typically conditioned to ignore the discomfort. It actually feels scary most of the time to pay attention to these things. It's a protective mechanism. So when I say to you, "Do you notice that your jaw is tight?" You might go, "I want to notice it. Davin says it. I could even believe that Davin knows it to be true, but I don't feel it." Because as a natural developmental protective mechanism, you have been conditioned to ignore the stressors in your body. And the problem with that is that then they get lost in translation. They become a story about you being bad at something completely different. They become somehow disembodied or disconnected from your voice and the sounds that you make, or even the life that you're living. It's really hard to confront the discomfort, and it's really hard to notice. But this is where practices like meditation are so useful because they encourage us to sit with the discomfort, to get to know it, because we can then understand that the story that we're telling ourselves is not necessarily the truth of what's happening in the body. And when we find the truth of what's happening in the body, that information, it never feels threatening, it actually feels liberating. Because when you notice that your jaw is stuck and you really pay attention to it and you sit in the mirror and you look at it and you put your hands on it and you try to move it intentionally and it feels really difficult. But when you do that and you do it and you do it and you do it and you notice it and you become aware of it, you notice that your voice feels more free when you sing. And you go, that feels good. I don't know why, but that feels better. Usually that actually starts with that feels weird. And then that weird turns into good. So, what someone like me can do best for someone like you is help you to notice. But the actual act of noticing is a practice that you have to come back to time and time and time again. Because here's the full cycle of this: you have to notice, and it's difficult to notice. But once you do notice, you no longer have to notice. So you have to start by someone saying, "Hey, do you notice that? Do you feel that?" And you go, "No." And you go, "But they say I should notice it." So I'm going to keep going back and see if I can find that. And you go back to it and you still don't notice it. And then one day you're like, "Oh, that." And then you lose it. And then you come back again, you're like, "Oh, I found it again. I found it again." And eventually it becomes so a part of your awareness, so a part of your consciousness that it's not something you even have to directly consider until something goes wrong. But maybe nothing ever goes wrong again. And you just have this awareness of the flexibility in your jaw and you can just do it. I've experienced over time people that have spent a lot of their singing life or voice using life avoiding the noticing. Like they had a few things that worked really well and they were able to lean into those for a long time and they were able to get by. And they were sort of like, this is good enough. I can just do this. And so they do those things and they do them over an extended period of time. But what inevitably happens is those things bump up against hardship, trouble, struggle, stuckness. And so in that moment, because that person hasn't cultivated the awareness, the noticing of the functionality of what's happening, they then fall quickly down the path of extreme story. They might even catastrophize what's going on and they will feel desperate and frustrated. And that's particularly alarming for someone who has felt skillful in a certain area. Why is this suddenly being taken away from me? Why is this gone? This has worked for years. Why does it suddenly not work? And I hate to break it to you, but nothing usually suddenly doesn't work. It's usually a progressive experience over a period of time that involves physical cues, potentially discomforts that you have ignored. And because you've ignored them, no shade, we all do it, but because you have ignored them, because you've conditioned yourself to sort of turn a blind eye to that feeling, that sensation, that frustration, your voice is getting hoarse really fast, you feel fatigued quickly, you name it. Because that, then suddenly when you are forced to pay close attention because it's just overwhelming, it's too much, you feel terrified and scared and frustrated and overwhelmed. And sometimes I've seen people like tap out completely because of this experience. And again, I have no judgment around this. These are dark nights of the soul. And a lot of times those are the opportunities that we have to seek help, to seek support, to seek someone that can point us toward a greater awareness of what it is that's going on with us. But I'm also offering this as a cautionary tale that it's good now to learn more about what you're doing so that if you do get into trouble, if you do feel frustrated, if you do feel stuck, that you have some tools and awarenesses to come back to. Particularly with the voice, there aren't I mean, it's a very complex instrument in that it's of your body, and that it is interconnected with your psyche, your spirit, your heart, your relationships. It's very complicated, but at the same time, from a functional standpoint, the functionality of your voice, it's a pretty simple mechanism in terms of how it works. And the thing that's so cool about it is your voice works the same as everybody else's. It's just conditioned very differently, but the mechanism itself is very similar. The functionality. So we can learn not only about our voice, but we can learn about the voice. To me, when I say this, it immediately brings my mind to just like what it means to learn about being a human. That when we learn to step more fully into our humanity and this experience and open up to things like our own suffering and our struggles and compassion and love and grace and playfulness and curiosity, we're not only learning about that for ourselves, we're learning about that because that is what it is to be human. And when we step into a deeper understanding of ourselves, we inevitably feel more connected to others, to humanity. And this is true from a voice aspect too. The more I understand the voice, the more I learn about the voice, the more compassion I have for the ways in which people struggle, and the more thrill it is when I see people really succeed. I have someone in my life who recently was diagnosed with a voice issue, and I know quite a bit about problems with the voice, things how they work or don't work. And I had an idea around what was going on with this person in this situation, but when I actually found out the diagnosis of what's wrong, I didn't know that specifically. And it actually was a relief to me to know what was going on with this person's voice because I realized that there's so much I don't know about what can go wrong and that sometimes things like this aren't anybody's fault. It actually this situation, it's not like a behaviorally driven situation. It's actually a viral situation that inhibited the instrument in quite a significant way. But to me, this opened up my own heart to more compassion for others as they're struggling because we just don't ever know what's going on until we really know. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And once you know it, it's nothing but liberating and powerful and deeper connecting. The hardest part is the noticing. And the other thing that I want to say about this is there's no timeline, specific timeline that it takes to begin the noticing. For some folks, it takes a really long time. Some folks, I'll work with them for a couple years and then suddenly they'll go, "Oh, I get it now. That thing that you said 2 years ago, I feel it. I really feel it in my throat. I feel it in my body. I know exactly what you're talking about." And I go, "Great." Better now than never, right? And I've learned as a coach and as a teacher that I can't control. There's nothing that I can do to influence that timeline. That when you're leading someone into greater awareness of themselves, you are bringing them through the experiences, the stories, the current awareness they have of their lives. And you can't rush that because we all land on the information that we can land on when we can land on it. And so we have to be really graceful with ourselves and really allow the process to unfold. Because there are these other moments where I'll say something to someone and very quickly, bam, they know it. Oh, yeah, I feel that. Yeah. And it's shocking and it's surprising. And all I can attribute that to is a readiness. Because, like I said, once you know it, you never unknow it. Now, at times you might feel like you lose it, but you still know it. Once you felt that feeling, once you've had that awareness, once you've had that experience, you always have had that experience. Again, I think that this is one of the compassionate ways to look at the hard parts of our lives, the struggles of our lives, that when you've gone through something, however hurtful or sucky it was, there's an awareness that you have that allows you to be more expansive in your understanding and open up not only to the possibilities within your own life, but toward a more compassionate mindset to others. I've shared with you before that, one of the most significant experiences of my life was the loss of my mother in 2021. And, here it is 2024, and we're actually bumping up against her anniversary of passing in November. And I have still a lot of grief and pain around that, but I also have so much gratitude because the experience of going through the loss of my mother gave me this broader glimpse of myself. I was able to understand my capacity in a totally different way. And I had a deeper understanding of the pain and sorrow and suffering that so many others go through. And again, like that inevitably leads to gratitude and compassion. Like gratitude for the ways in which my life is so beautiful, and I've been given so much, and compassion for the suffering of others, and that I know what it's like to suffer. To me, this is like one of the great parts of the contrast of our lives and learning and being frustrated. It allows us to know a more expansive understanding of what it is that we want and what it is that we desire. And it leads us into a fuller capacity of humanity and connecting with other humans, which is really what this whole gig is about. Even from singing in a performance standpoint, I'm going to say this till I'm gone, that singing is always about connection. It's always about connection. Now, that connection could be with yourself for sure. But the most powerful connection that you can find through singing is the connection of others, of them hearing you, seeing you, or maybe even participating with you. Performance is never about performing, it's always about connecting. I shouldn't say it's never about, I mean, it could be, but a good performance is always about a deep expression of oneself in a way that allowed for connection. So when we go through difficult times, when we go through hard times, when we feel stuck, when we feel inhibited, and we share about that, it allows us into deeper relationship. And if we've come out on the other side of those things and we know that that's possible for us, we then can carry the torch for others who might be in the midst of struggle and suffering. The only reason that I can sit in a voice coaching session or do the work that I do or even stand up in front of 5,000 neuroscientists and get them to sing is because I've done that kind of stuff before. I know what happens. I know it works. I know that people love to sing. I know that people love to feel free. I know that however stuck someone feels in their voice, there's the opportunity to alleviate some of that constriction and tension and find an opening, find more openness and more freedom. And that is a good feeling. And I didn't always know that. I've had to go through lots of difficult experiences. I've had to go through lots of failures and even more successes to know it. But in my heart of hearts, I know that part of being a human is moving toward liberation and freedom. And it just so happens that you and me, we happen to think that singing and the voice is a really important, essential part of that journey. But it starts with us always coming home to ourselves and that deep noticing of what it is to be in this experience, in this body, with this voice, with this heart, with this mind, opening until we can't get any more open or any more free. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's actually really, really difficult, but it's amongst one of the most noble tasks within this process. And it always feels epically rewarding to increase your awareness. It always feels really freeing to have a deeper awareness of how your breath works in your body, to really feel the expansion in your lower abdomen when you breathe. It feels liberating to not be so stiff in your neck and your shoulders. It feels really good to be able to articulate words clearly by flexibly moving your tongue and your jaw. And it feels really good when the register balance lines up and your voice just comes out clearly. And it feels really good, really, really, really good when you can do all those things in front of others as a means of deeper connection. So the hardest thing is noticing. But you, my friend, just like all of us, just like me, you have the capacity to increase your awareness. And it's going to take some work, it's going to take some effort. But I promise that if you develop practices around singing, around sitting in your discomfort, around interrogating the stories of your mind, around investing in your dreams around what's possible, trusting in that deep call within you that's like, this doesn't feel right. I think I can do more. There's more. I know there's more. Trust that. That's your inner being. It's your inner knowing. It's always pointing you toward your truth. It's never the small thoughts of your mind. It always feels like a dream that is irrational and too big But pursuing that by starting with simply noticing, it's the path of freedom and liberation. And I hope you'll join me on it because I have to tell you, it's worth it. I've done it. I'm doing it. I will continue to do it. All right, my friends, I love you very much. I'm grateful for these conversations. I hope you'll stay connected with me. I hope you'll share this podcast with others. And until next time, peace.